Oh, we can hear you now. Okay, folks, we're
Right.
live.
We can begin the meeting. So this is the Gloucester Board of Health meeting of July 7, 2022. It is approximately 5:30. This is a remote meeting conducted on Zoom, and the meeting is being recorded by video and audio in accordance with the open meeting law and also pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. And this meeting will be conducted by remote participation, which means that the public may not physically attend the meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. All votes taken by the board during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. The listing of matters is those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. The order of the agenda can be modified at the board's discretion. So with that said, let's introduce the board members and staff. I am Joe Rosa, the chair of the Board of Health. Max.
Max Shank, Director for the Health Department.
Fred.
I'm Fred Cowan. I serve as a consultant for the Septic Review Subcommittee.
Kelly.
I'm Kelly Highland, a Board of Health member.
Claudia.
Claudia Schweitzer, Vice Chair of the Board of Health.
Eric. You're
You're
muted.
muted. We can't
Board
hear
of Health member.
Very good. Bobby Orlando.
Hi, Bobby Orlando, Recording Secretary.
And is Don, is this phone icon Don, or who is this?
The person listed as 978
Yes, right.
265 3769. Can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, this is Fred Swain from Wind River.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay.
I thought I heard
Thank
that
you, Fred.
originally.
All right.
And
So-
the other staff, there's other staff, I think.
There is.
Sorry. Who else do we have? We have Brian.
Hi, Bree Gray from Health Department. I'm one of the health inspectors.
Very good. Kate.
Hi, Kate Cunningham, public health nurse.
Great. Is there anyone else I've missed, or?
I think we've got them all.
Good, good. First item on the agenda is public oral communication. That's an opportunity for the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on an item not listed on the agenda. Next, do you see anyone wishing to speak?
Just to acknowledge that Rachel is also here.
Ah, yes, Rachel, hi.
There are, it's funny, we have more panelists than attendees. We have 5 people. Nobody has their hand raised at this time. Oops, hold on. Councilor Tracy O'Neill, forgive me, Tracy, is raising her hand. Lee, can you allow Tracy to speak, please?
Okay, good. Are we good?
You're all set. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is on the agenda. I'm on my phone and I don't have the agenda in front of me. Are you going to talk about the creek and how often you're going to do testing, et cetera? Or anything like that?
We are.
Okay,
It's towards the end of the agenda, but it is there.
okay. And, okay, I guess I'll wait. Should I wait till then, right? To ask questions. I'm just wondering what the schedule is to, for testing and what the numbers are and all that stuff. I
It's
know
on the
it-
agenda.
Okay, so I'll wait till the end.
If you
Thank
don't
you.
mind. Thank you, Tracy, for your patience.
Thanks.
Anyone else, Max?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the meeting of June 2nd, 2022.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I
for the
second.
Second meeting.
The motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion, changes, alterations? No? All in favor?
Aye.
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 And aye. Anyone opposed? No. The motion carries 4-0. The next item on the agenda is committee reports. And I believe the only item under that is the interview committee. Claudia.
Yeah. So the interview committee we've done several interviews. It's been a very productive time. We will schedule people to come back for a second interview. And we are hoping that next Thursday that we have another board meeting, just a quick board meeting to present to you, our finalists. That will be decided tomorrow, but that is kind of because Jill Cahill's going on vacation and she's kind of wanting to move it along. So we will keep you informed about whether, there's a meeting next week. I talked to Max, we have to know by Monday or Tuesday, I guess. in order to-
Right.
Yeah, it would just be very brief. So
Very good.
that's the update, but we're feeling hopeful that we definitely have some good candidates.
Excellent. Any other comments regarding the search for director?
Kelly, did you want to add anything?
Nothing to add, no.
All right, under new business, first item is to be discussed by Kayla Doherty at 667 Essex Ave regarding the placement of a sign regarding food allergies in public parks.
So just by way of background for the board, this is in response to Kayla reaching out to the administration forwarding her inquiry to the board and us presenting it to the board for consideration. The board, if what she's proposing is and she'll have a presentation for you, but is to place food allergy awareness signage at the various parks in the city. And the board, if they choose and agree, would vote only to provide a recommendation to the administration. The administration would have to move it forward from there.
Very good. So Kayla, I have no control over what you can do, but you have the floor.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everybody. How are
Hi.
you today?
Good.
Good to meet you. My name's Kayla Doherty. Jesse, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Jesse Doherty, I'm Kayla's husband. Nice to meet you.
Jesse, thank you.
Thank you for having
Kayla,
us.
Thanks.
we're seeing your presentation, so that's great.
Okay, great, awesome, thank you. We appreciate you guys having us. We are both grew up in Gloucester. We're full-time Gloucester residents. Have big lineages of family here. This is actually my first Board of Health meeting, so excited to see what happens over here. So just a little bit about our story. These are our children. This is Graham and Emmy. They're both growing up in Gloucester. They both go to Majestic Harbor preschool. And Graham, who's 5, is going to be attending West Parish here in the fall. Graham's allergic to tree nuts. He unfortunately had an anaphylactic reaction when he was 2 years old. So we found out, obviously, in a very traumatic, hard way, that he has a food allergy. Later on, we found out that our daughter had also a food allergy. She's allergic to eggs in all forms. She's never had a donut, never had a cookie. Luckily, there's lots of, choices for her in the vegan world, but she also has food allergies as well. So, kind of new to this space in the last, 5 years or so with our kids. Something that we were not that close to before we had kids. And so just kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about our story with them. So The goal, obviously, of our presentation mainly is to, give as much awareness to food allergies in our community as possible. We want to be able to take our kids to, one of the local parks or playgrounds without, having to worry about, wiping down a slide or, having a very tough conversation with a parent to say, hey, do you mind wiping your kid's hands, or, restricting eating to a picnic area. We were at Cripple Cove in East Gloucester about a month ago, and there was a child walking around with a hard-boiled egg, and we had to leave. So the inclusion, opportunity for our kids is, very limited when, people are just, frankly unaware, obviously, of how, dangerous it can be to our children. We posted some stats here just to, I won't get into the details. You guys can read that here, but obviously, food allergies in the country are increasing rapidly. These are the top 9 that are called out, which many of you may be familiar with. But, between, it's increased 50% between, 1997 and 2011, and it's only, getting larger and larger, as time goes on. So, I've worked with a couple other advocates. I actually started an Instagram page that has about 2,000 followers now at this point. And it was merely really for toddler food lunch ideas, which kind of grew into a space that became, for allergy awareness. I've had a lot of, local parents reach out to me saying, my child can't pack peanuts at school, or they can't pack, this snack or gluten-free or whatever it may be. Do you have any ideas of, what you can, tell me that's safe to pack for other children? So it kind of grew into this, community of advocacy for me. Obviously, it's very near and dear to my heart, as it's affecting my 2 children. So a few other advocates that I've partnered with in the past have, had really good success in their communities implementing signs such as these. As you can see, there's, different variations of the signs where it calls out, just simple, non violation or anything, it's really mainly for awareness. And it's just a message to people that would be completely unaware, just wipe your kids' hands, if you're going to eat at a picnic bench. Just a simple reminder that wouldn't maybe even cross your mind if you weren't, living in that world every day. So, what we're asking is that, even if it's at one park in Gloucester, even if it's at, 2 parks, having a sign there that just gives people that, simple reminder that says, hey, this is, this will save potentially a life. We don't want, there's so many worries in the world right now that, the last thing that we need is to worry about our kids doing a normal everyday thing of going down a slide or, climbing on the monkey bars without having a severe, allergic reaction. So it's really obviously important to us, like I mentioned, the inclusion of just, doing everyday normal kid things, playing on a slide or, going on those monkey bars or going on a swing without having to, be crazy about wiping our kids' hands down or bringing, Clorox wipes and wiping the whole slide down before we, take the kid to the park. Like I mentioned, the safety aspect of it, one little tiny particle could send our kid to the ER. And as I mentioned to you guys earlier on in the call, I've been through it twice now with both my kids, unfortunately, and it's something no parent really should have to worry about in my eyes, or even have to be exposed to. Also, like I mentioned, awareness is really everything to us. It's not like we're looking to have, someone, constantly monitoring the parks and playgrounds in Gloucester. We just are looking for, non-enforcement type behavior, really just an opportunity for someone to see the sign again and just say, you know what, let me do just that. Let me wipe my kids' hands before they go off and play. And yeah, in the education aspect, obviously. And obviously we're looking for the community support. We want Gloucester to become a place where, they're looked at especially from a tourism aspect and from, a high traffic area in the summer. We want people to feel comfortable coming to Gloucester to say, you know what, this is important to Gloucester. Obviously with that growing rate of, kids that have food allergies, we want Gloucester to be a place where people feel comfortable, spending time and spending, their families, money to go on vacation. It's really important to us as Gloucester residents, as two people that grew up in Gloucester. The economic portion of that is really important, to, the Gloucester community. So not to continue to bore you with some slides, but I just wanted to thank you guys, obviously, for even just giving us the opportunity to talk about this topic. It's obviously very important to both of us. We obviously want our kids to be included as much as possible. We want to be an advocate for the other parents that are in this similar space, as it pertains to food allergies. Again, it's not a fun space, it's always in the back of your mind and always just something that you want to just, scream from the rooftops. But again, we want our kids to feel as safe as possible. And that's honestly the most important thing to us as possible. So we're hoping with just a little, approval of this, we could, work with the DPW or whoever we need to get the signs, created and installed. And we're looking to, really hopefully have it as a movement in Gloucester to say, this is something that's important to the city. So Jesse, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, you covered everything. The only thing that I would add is just, I think we touched on something at the very beginning. If you don't have kids that either have food allergies, or if you don't know of other people that have them, again, the awareness is the biggest part for us. We both had no idea that this was such a growing kind of rate within, primarily children under 18. We didn't grow up with them ourselves. And once this happened, it really just opened our eyes to this entire new community. And the outreach has been amazing. I mean, she's had some really nice sponsorships from products that have reached out because of the Instagram page. So yeah, just we really appreciate you guys listening to us today. Thank you.
Well, Kayla, thank you. And as well as Jason, very good presentation, and your first appearance before the Board of Health has been excellent.
Thank you.
So any comments, questions from the board? Eric.
As a pediatrician, I thank you very much for doing this. I think it's great. And I really appreciate it. I think this is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well done, very organized, very clear.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And I would be in full support of recommending the allergy signs at our public areas.
Thank
If
you,
we want
Kelly.
to put forth that to administration.
Going to call that a motion?
Is there anyone in the audience, Max, that is wanting to make a comment regarding this?
I apologize, 1 second. I'm not seeing anybody else raise a hand at the moment.
Okay. So was someone voicing something that could be considered a motion?
I think Kelly was.
Kelly, yes.
Yeah, recommending to administration that we support the install of the food allergen signs at our public parks or places where children congregate.
I
Yes.
second that.
Good. So before a vote, any discussion on this issue? Any further discussion? I would just ask Kayla and Jason whether or not you have a particular favorite regarding the signs that you presented.
Yeah, so we do, I think it's the first one, and I can reshare my screen too. The first one does list all of the most common food allergens. I'm trying to reshare my screen here. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, we
We
can see it.
can see it.
Oh, you can see it. Okay, great.
Yep.
So this is kind of the more typical one that most of the other advocates in other cities have been requesting to be put up. The only difference that would be called out is there's actually 9 that were voted recently by the Congress, the state that basically there's 9 now, and it's including sesame. So we would just want to include Sesame in on that. But I think we're gearing more towards just, something simple and straightforward as this.
Good, good.
Can it be different colors?
It can be whatever color. I don't care.
So one question I had is, do you know other cities and towns on the North Shore that have done it?
Not particularly in the North Shore, but in my deck, I did include articles of other places that have done it across the US.
Okay, because it is often helpful if, if there are other models for that locally.
Sure. I haven't heard anything locally.
Okay.
One thing I did want to add was if it could be translated into kind of the common languages that we have here in Gloucester.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know what that would look like, but I would definitely advocate for at least Spanish. We have Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian that are common languages. So just so that everyone is aware that might not be able to read English.
That would be great.
Yeah, I agree with Kelly. That's an excellent idea. Kayla, would you be willing to participate with either the administration or DPW in, if not the design, perhaps the design of the signs, and making sure that the important messages that you've highlighted get represented?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to be a part of it for sure.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. I vote yes. Eric?
I vote yes.
Claudia?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Kayla, Jason, thank you again for stepping up and doing something that's probably quite important.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you guys
appreciate you
very
having
much.
us. Yeah.
Kayla, if you can do me a favor and just reach out to me again next week and we'll
Sure.
get the ball rolling.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
All right.
So the next item on the agenda concerns Wind River Environmental and Ronald Strong of Realty Trust. A hearing regarding the use of on-site septic and grease storage tanks located at 163 Western Ave, also known as 1 Bond Street or 153 Rear Western Ave.
So I'd like to start this conversation by first making clear that this is not an enforcement letter that was provided to them. This was permit time for the facility, and longstanding questions about the tanks on site have been wafting out there for quite a while, pardon the pun. And with complaints that we've received from neighbors on and off on occasion, and concerns that we've had about some of the spills that have happened on some occasions, not often, but some, and odor, et cetera. I felt it was an opportunity with the permitting process to ask the property owner and the business itself to come forward to have a discussion about the operations on the facilities. As you may have heard, I asked Ron and company if they could provide, the history, and my thanks to Fred for joining this conversation as a board member who was on board for the whole long haul of this concern. And, but to give a history of the site, its use, when I came on in 2005, they were using a multitude of tanker trucks to haul waste, as well as the large white tank that is still in place now. They've since then added another tank that is there. By way of background, in terms of regulations, both the Title V and the local wastewater regulations require that no fixed tank be on site for the transfer of septage or grease. And so I guess that's going to be one of the questions that comes up, is whether or not that is the case, and whether or not for either of those units, and whether or not that can continue. So, but before we get too far down the road, I don't know, Ron or Ringo, or who wants to take the lead on the historic aspects of use on the site.
I'd like to take the lead if that's okay.
Absolutely.
This site's been a contractor's yard since the 1800s when my grandfather started it. Went from my grandfather to my father to me. And that goes back to the 1800s. As far as the septic, I went in the septic business in 1966, and that's when it was called a night soil license rather than what it is now. And in 1972, the city of Gloucester, along with a few other towns, were having a disposal problem. And we had semi trucks for gravel and what have you. So they stopped us from dumping on Parker Street. So I made an agreement with the city of Lawrence and Fitchburg. Their plants were at the capacity, so they were welcome the revenue. So we started hauling, because we couldn't dump in Gloucester, we started hauling to those two towns. At the time, I believe it was Artel Crowley was the Board of Health, and George Riley was in charge of the pump stations and the sewer lines. They both came to me and they said I had an unfair advantage to the other haulers because they all had small trucks and we had 9,000 gallon tankers. And could I make an arrangement? So they were in the process of planning where the sewer plant is right now. So that's how the site where the tankers are now was picked, because it was adjacent to what was going to be there. And so at that point, we would have a disposal fee and a trucking fee, and we allowed other pumpers to go in there. Unfortunately, I'm the last man standing of the group, but it was Clean Right out of Gloucester, which was Charlie O'Leary, and it was RF Lane out of Gloucester. And then from out of town, which was Hamilton was having a problem, Ipswich was having a problem, Rockport was having a problem. It was Mario Balzerini from Rockport, Art Thompson from Beverly, and Joyce Espool from Ipswich, and Paul Ricker from Hamilton. So from that point on, we were doing it. And then after the plant was built, they had restricted hours and some wrinkles in it. And it was more expensive than what we're doing. And so we basically just continued it. And I forget what year, Max, we started having the inspections, but you're back to 2005, and it was before you. And we never had, we always got the license every year. We never had any issues that I'm aware of. And then last year, the year before, I guess, May 2020, someone had raised some questions to you. You said you'd look into it. You sent us an email back that we were all set. And then we didn't, and then it brings us up to today.
Thanks, Ron. Anybody else so Ron, when did Wind River take over the actual operations, not the property?
I would
Still
say,
the owner.
I would say approximately 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Really? That long ago? Okay, because I've been with the city almost 17 years. I thought it was more recent than that, but I trust your memory more than I do mine. So now, at that time, so obviously a lot of the waste that was going to the facility was coming from the general region. So Hamilton, Wenham, Manchester, et cetera. Operations have expanded. Where else? And somebody from Wind River, I'm sure, can answer this question. What other communities are transporting their waste to Gloucester at this moment? So Fred, Rob, Marshall, you're muted, just so you know. Anybody?
Max, can you hear me?
I can, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay. We will transport gallons from a number of cities and towns into that yard to transport down to our treatment plant in Taunton. It's a majority of the North Shore can wind up in our yard at any time. There's a lack of ability to dispose many towns at the Greater Lawrence treatment plant, Haverhill, and then going from there, the closest one from those two would be in Upper Blackstone out in Fitchburg. So what we do is, as we run during the day, if we're in the area, say close to North Andover or the Haverhill treatment plants, and it's towns that can go there, we transport directly into those treatment plants. What happens is we have emergency calls. We're a 24/7 emergency-based business. We might have an emergency come up on a Friday that we can't dispose of. We might have multiple emergencies. So what we will do is at that point, transfer the gallons into our yard, hold them there until hopefully the next business day. And we will then take and transfer from our yard to our treatment plant down in Taunton with one of our 9,000 gallon transport trailers. That's how it works with the septic. You know, Gloucester is only open till 2:30 is the last time that they'll let us into their yard. They only take Gloucester. The closest place to dispose Rockport or any of the surrounding towns is Haverhill, where they will take it. So that's where we wind up having to store gallons to then get rid of them. Because also Gloucester, if we put it in our tank at our yard, they now no longer will take our gallons from us. It has to stay in our truck for us to transport it to their facility. That's for the septic. As far as the grease goes, there is no place around that makes sense business-wise to dispose of our grease as we are pumping. So what we do with that is, again, we will transfer into our tanker, which is a 20,000 gallon frac tank, the blue tank to the left. When we have enough in there to make a full 9,000 gallon load, we will then transport that down to our facility in Taunton to dispose of. The reason why we do that is in this area, we have the Salem treatment plant, SESD. They will take grease, but only from their 5 local cities. So that's where we run into an issue with disposal of grease. That's primarily how the business is run down there.
Now, I was looking at a list that Craig had provided me, and I apologize he's not here. He had a meeting, another meeting he had to be at, so I'm kind of pinch hitting to a certain extent. But he did provide a list of the haulers, because as you know, if you're transporting through communities, the home community needs to get the hauler, the permits from the different other communities. It includes Middleton, Newburyport, Reading, Raleigh, which I can kind of understand, but Somerville, Topsfield, Newburyport, North Andover. So it's Merrimack, so it's a little bit more far afield than I would have thought. And there are no other opportunities to bring waste closer in, is what you're saying?
Well, it all depends on, it depends on the time of day, time of year. There's many different scenarios that result in us having to bring gallons back to our facility. Plant shutdowns, wintertime. You know, we can't always guarantee that we can get into a treatment plant before the end of the day. And when that happens, we can't leave gallons on our trucks overnight or they'll freeze, crack valves, do damage to the vehicles. So that's another reason why we transfer gallons into those tanks to get them off the trucks, especially in the wintertime with that. But Craig asked me for a list of all of our cities and towns that we would haul through in order to get this started. So I had asked him do you need everything or what? Because I mean, technically Wind River works, you know, from Canada to Florida. So that's where I got a large list together. And then after that, we had agreed that it would be the local names, local towns close by, you know, that we would get in to get this going. But we have Somerville. That's one of our places, Assembly Row. We do a lot of grease out of Assembly Row. We have to be in and out of there certain times of the day. And from a business standpoint, to run a truck from Somerville down to Taunton to offload to come back up to this area is very difficult. That's why if 2 trucks go down to Somerville to do a job, we can bring that back, put it into our frac tank, and then call our transport bulk trailer to haul that down for us. And then we can continue on throughout the day doing jobs.
That answers that. So I appreciate that. You know, I'm looking at several different bits of information that Craig provided. And I want to stick to, I guess, I think it's probably most appropriate is what was involved with the letter that was sent out to you folks. And that's about the tanks themselves. So regardless of history and everything else, the Department of Environmental Protection and Title V call out the fact that you can't have permanently stationed or permanently affixed tanks to be used as transfer stations. I know, believe me, I'm very aware of at least the big white tank has been there for near ever and was, you know, inspected by me. It was inspected by Jennifer Olivier before me and Dave Sargent. I'm not sure if the regulations were in place at that point or not, and I'm not aware of any grandfathering. There haven't been any changes to Title V since 1996, really, any significant ones at least. So, so we know that one is definitely on the ground and cradled and not transportable. But the other one, can you describe how that is viewed as being transportable?
It's what we would call a frac tank. It has axles. It has one axle with wheels. It can be connected to a tractor and hauled away like any other trailer that you would find on a tractor trailer setup. We typically wouldn't haul it away that way, but it is technically a portable trailer. It's not a fixed item.
So
if you want,
in the loophole of regulations, it meets that standard, you know, but just.
Yes, if you wanted me to move that, it could be moved. It's a registerable trailer and it is roadworthy.
I appreciate you saying the word registerable. Is it registered? Because that would be the other technical aspect that needs to be met for that.
Right. So as it stands right now, it is not registered. I think I remember you and I being there when it came in. We replaced 2 old bulk trailers, and we removed the 2 old bulk trailers that were, again, they were there, they were registerable, but they weren't registered either. They never left the property since I started working there. So we took those out and we swapped it kind of a 1-for-1 with this trailer, which was about the same amount of gallons. And at that time, I was unaware that it had to actually be registered and be able to be moved. I honestly didn't know the state regulation in Title V that said that we couldn't have a permanent structure on the property until Craig had sent me that. It's one of the Title V rules that I just never saw. So that's when I first realized that rule as far as the white septic tank.
And you're saying, forgive me for interrupting, but you're saying the blue tank, the movable tank is exclusive to just grease?
Yes, all we handle in that is grease. And I think a few years back, I know you were there with me and possibly, I want to say somebody from the building department and maybe somebody from the DEP. We came and we did a full walk around of it and it was deemed that it was okay. It was a 1-for-1 swap of the grease trailers that we had. we were consolidating two different trailers into one to make it a safer operation.
So I mean, as a side note, honestly, I have and folks who don't know, every time a septic system gets pumped out in the city, at least in this city, there's a function check form that needs to be filled out. Fred, you're very familiar with these. And besides giving a cursory inspection of whatever system is being pumped, there are some notes there from the pumper as to the number of gallons, et cetera. One of the ones I have in front of me is for lobster land. And this is just kind of a shot across the bow, as it were.
Yep, Craig brought this up to me already.
Yeah, we have a volume pump, 5,000 gallons, pumped half grease and half septage. As you know, you can't mix the load like that and send it someplace because the receiving facility doesn't like it when you do that. And I'm not sure if it's even allowed.
Okay, so yeah, some treatment plants do allow that. We can, it depends. There's a couple that you can dispose a complete mixed load in. Not that we could do it with lobster land, but just for an example, Salem treatment plant in Salem, they'll allow mixed loads. It's very few and far between that allow that. It's very few treatment plants to begin with that will even allow that will receive grease from a company. So with that lobster land, that I had spoken to Craig about this. Yeah, that's one of the most tricky ones that you could pull out. So he has at his facility, he has a grease tank out back and then two tanks out front. I want a primary and a secondary before it goes to his pump station. So what we do is we pump a full load of grease, we pump the full grease tank out back, and then we will skim the secondary tank that's in front. And it's more grease than anything because of the grease that carries over into that. And that's what we do that. Typically, it's just considered a full grease load, and that's how we dispose of it. We'll bring that down we'll haul that down to our treatment plant in Taunton, and they will treat it and handle it for us. I honestly don't understand why it was written up as half grease, half septic, because I know that job. I was on site for it. And that was 2,500 gallons pumped out of the rear grease tank, and then 2,500 skimmed off of that, I guess, primary or secondary tank. And then he has the other tank that is solely septic only.
So just by way of full disclosure, it does show that it didn't go to the wastewater treatment plant here in town. I know that because of our permits, that would never be allowed anyway.
No.
Can you explain what WSG, that is the acronym being provided for the treatment plant that it went to?
That is our treatment plant down in Taunton.
That's the one in Taunton. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Waste Solutions Group.
Okay. There are other concerns, discrepancies regarding some of the function check reports where you have septic, as far as I can tell, and I haven't gone through these thoroughly, pumped the same day, two separate reports going to two separate locations. Not quite sure. One's to the Gloucester plant, another one is to the plant in Taunton. But that's not what you folks are here for today. So I'm actually not going to get too deep into this, but those are the kinds of things that are going to bring a little bit more heartburn down the road, I think. So let's stay focused on the tank. So we have the one trailer tank. It just skirts and meets the requirements. It's used, according to yourself, exclusively for grease, and we hope that that is the case.
It is.
We still have the issue of the large white tank that's there that does not meet the current requirements of DEP. So I guess what I need from you folks is, I know it's been historically used that way. It's been approved by me. It's been approved by my predecessors that way. But the fact of the matter is, when DEP contacts us, they say, what is that doing there? And we're kind of scratching our heads at being able to explain why. So I don't think there's any grandfathering allowed for that particular use of that particular tank. Are there options that you think you could come up with within 6 months if the board chose to move forward for eliminating the use of that tank and using other methods that are a little bit more in line with the regulations?
If Fred wants me to speak on that one, yes. If you are giving us 6 months, I can come up with a solution for other means other than that tank, possibly another one of those frac tanks. It meets the requirements. I'm assuming that you would want it basically that same setup. We could do something like that. I don't really like doing the smaller ones because it's just too many trailers. So one of those frac tanks, I think, would be a good solution.
Okay. Question for you, and I apologize that I don't even know the answer to this.
Sure.
What building department permits would be needed for those, if any? Do you know?
Building department? None that I know of. It was kind of odd. I want to say it was probably about 5-6 years ago when we had that walk around with it, and somebody from the building department was there, and I don't understand why they were, because they didn't say that we needed any permits from the building department. They were just kind of looking over it from a complaint, I think, from a neighbor, and it was deemed that everything was okay. There wasn't any odors coming from it. I think at that point, and not to put a blame on anything, I think there was a lot of odors coming from the treatment plant, the Gloucester treatment plant at that time. And I think that's where they deemed that was coming from.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think there's a shared responsibility as well.
Absolutely.
But,
Absolutely.
So, okay, I just wanted to get an idea of that. And, you know, as far as the department's opinion on the use of the other tank, that would be, I don't think we would move forward with permitting further use beyond that 6-month time frame for that large white tank, because it is permanently affixed. It's not meeting the requirements. I think the alternate solution would be acceptable to the department to have that, another one of the other units used. My only other concern is there are neighbor complaints. There are, you know, it's becoming more and more a residential neighborhood than it ever was an isolated spot. And your hours of operation, can any modifications be made to the hours of operation for when folks are pumping to help alleviate some of the concerns the neighbors may have in regards to noise and particularly odor?
What modifications would you look for?
Not too early, not too late.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know, typical is, you know, nothing before 8 a.m. and nothing after 7 p.m.
Quick, this is Fred. Now, is that standard through the entire town for trash dump trucks and everything? Or
Trash trucks is actually even a little bit worse. But yeah, typical. And I would have to, actually, Fred, I would have to pull up the regulations for trash trucks, et cetera, to be able to give that to you to say for certain. But, and that actually, Fred, you raised a good point. Would you be willing, let's put it this way, to meet the same standards that dump trucks would need to meet here in town?
What are those?
what are those?
I would
What
have
are
to,
those?
again, I'll get back to you on that, but it's more of a discussion item. Like, real concern was one, I wanted to respond to the concerns of the neighbors, although, you know, to be quite frank, as Ron has mentioned, that facility has been there for quite a long time. It's not an unknown quantity in the neighborhood. But the fact of the matter is, we do want to be good neighbors, and we want to be sympathetic to people trying to sleep and have a certain quality of life for the investment that they've made. So if you're, I think it is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or thereabouts for trash trucks, but I would have to double check that. The main thing was
Hey,
the
what-
tank for this.
Max, can I jump in? This is Ronnie.
Absolutely, go ahead.
It's an emergency, it's an emergency situation, as far as the pumping, you can't regulate it from 7 to 7, something like that. And we've always been good neighbors. I don't really know who's pushing this. And, as far as like, then, we also, separate from Wind River, we snowplow. We're out all hours of the night starting. There's never been any restriction as time as what we do. And I think it would put a real handicap on what their business is as far as not being able to provide a service. If you're saying it's 7 to 7, I don't think, they can speak for that, but I might, if it was me pumping, the city of Gloucester used to call us all the time for stuff before they had their own pump truck. I mean, this area was basically established by George Riley in the 70s, because you didn't have the sewer department that you have right now. And I mean, we were constantly out, day and night. So that's just my thoughts on it. And if there's a particular neighbor, I'm willing to go speak to them and see what their problem is. But as I understand it, it's a fellow that moved here a year ago and thinks he's going to change everything.
Like I said, it's not, in terms of what started this meeting, it's kind of going outside the scope.
Yeah. I mean, when you're
but
trying to restrict the hours, there's no hour restricted now. And the other question I have, do you remember why it was all right when you were looking into it to the DEP on May 2020, that you said you'd look into it and you got back to us that we were all set, that the DEP was fine with it? Has these regulations changed in the last 2 years?
You're asking me to remember something that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm just trying to see the timeline. But I mean, we have it that you were fine. You came over, you said you had to look into something. You emailed us back that the DEP was fine. And so I'm just wondering what happened in the last 2 years.
If that went via email, if you could forward that to me, Ronnie, because I would have to go back and look at exactly what was said at that time.
Right.
So
I mean,
no,
that's,
sure.
I'm not trying to, cause any problems,
No,
but
no, it's quite all right. I get it. I don't blame you.
but
for
I'm just trying to
defend your
find
business.
I'm just trying to find the timeline of when the regulations changed. It seems like from what we have, if it changed, it was in the last 2 years.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was that, but I would actually have to look at the timeline of changes in for Title V, but I don't think it was that recent. There haven't been any really recent
Right, that's what it
changes to Title V.
Yeah.
And it existed and may have been not paid attention
And
to by myself or anybody else.
that's the case that tank is considered permanent, has to remove that. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a problem. We can do that. And just-
Yeah. Just.
So we
by-
started with trailers is how we started with trailers, and this keeps the 2 tanks keep the truck traffic down is what it does.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And if I can just interject briefly, because it was mentioned only, for trash deliveries and removals, delivered to maintain before, let's see, dumpsters serviced by, that's dumpsters, forgive me. Shall not be dumped, delivered or maintained before 6 a.m. or after 8 p.m.
Yeah,
So
that's not
basically, it's 6
under,
a.m. to 8 p.m.
yeah,
Sorry,
but
sir?
that's not an emergency situation.
It's not an emergency situation, but how often is there a septic emergency that requires?
When I was doing it, I had a hard time after we sold out to Wind River to actually have a good night's sleep, because I was always on red alert that I had to go out.
That's probably when you have the city contract.
So I had a hard time adjusting to that.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
he has to pump in the wintertime, get it out of his truck.
Right, that is true as well. So I guess the broader statement on that, if we can just wrap it up, because I don't want to belabor it too much. And also, we did post this as a public hearing, so the public does have an opportunity to speak if you want to raise your hand. The main
Max,
thing
can I
is
just
Go
ask you
ahead.
something? As far as that 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., as far as the timeframes go, or whatever we decide on a time frame. Are we talking that we can't run the trucks because we're not always pumping into our yard? Like if we started earlier in the morning, we're starting our trucks leaving, we might not be coming back to offload anything until later in the day. And we can work around the transport trailers that would be coming to remove our gallons. We can work around that, but are you saying that we can't start our business as far as getting in, starting the trucks and getting on the
No,
road?
I think that would, I think I'd be getting myself in a lot of trouble if I tried to tell you exactly how to run your business.
Yeah, but that's
So, but
more doable.
I think, Rob, what I'm looking for, the department's looking for, and of course the board has their own thoughts, but it's just more of a conscientious effort to be aware of the neighbors a little bit more in terms of noise, especially on weekends, especially after hours, after 5 p.m., that sort of thing. So whatever
Yes.
modifications you can make that are a little bit more considerate in that regard, I think that would go a long way in helping. And
Okay.
that's really all I can ask you to do at this time.
All right.
Can I ask a question somewhat out of ignorance? But is the so-called mobile tank ever moved? Has it ever been moved, or is it just stationary?
It has never been moved. It's been stationary, but it's not been modified to be stationary. It doesn't have stairways, walkways, or anything. Nothing affixing it to that property. Like I said, if we had to, I could move that trailer out of there tomorrow.
Right. So I guess part of my concern is that given that it isn't typically on the roads, it's the stresses that it undergoes are minimized. It's sitting static. And so how is the integrity of that tank tested? You're very close to sensitive wetlands there. How are we assured that it's not going to have a catastrophic failure?
Well, I can never assure you that anything wouldn't have a catastrophic failure, no matter how much you test it or, you try. Anything could have a failure. That tank, there has been no requirements to test the tank. It's a visual. We do visually inspect the tanks. Part of our yearly inspection process for the part of our yearly permitting process is doing an inspection on those tanks. It's a visual. It's a steel tank. It would be pretty noticeable if there was something that was going to happen to cause a failure of that tank. There's no stresses really on it. That tank, albeit that it's a mobile tank, it's designed to sit stationary for very long periods of time. That's why it's called a frac tank. It's used for that purpose.
You're speaking about the green, rather the blue tank.
The blue tank, correct.
I think,
Yes.
I think what Joe is focusing on is the silver tank.
No,
The silver-
I was referring to the so-called mobile tank.
Oh,
Yes.
there's also a
Yeah.
third tank on the property farther down from the blue tank. What's in that?
That was one of our old transport trailers that we used years ago. It was pumped out and
So it's empty.
we don't use it. It was pumped out years ago. The hatches were capped on it, so nothing is stored in that trailer anymore.
What sort of inspection service is there for a fuel oil truck?
Inspection for a fuel truck? That actually, I worked for a company years ago that did that ran fuel. It's a lengthy process. Oil trucks that run on the road don't have to really be inspected as much as a fuel truck. A gas truck, they pressure test them. There's probably 6 different tests that they do to a gas tanker, if you're talking gasoline. And then the closest thing to what we use would probably be an oil truck. And that is a visual inspection only on those. As long as they visually inspect out, then they are deemed safe.
But who does that inspection?
It's I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. The person that we use, they were a state licensed operation. We would have to call them in. Yeah, but I haven't heard of anybody that inspects tanks like we have, other than just a visual.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if it had to be moved, you're transporting very troubling liquid across Gloucester streets.
Correct.
So
no.
If it met standard registration and standard inspection, imagining that it is some kind of petroleum, and isn't, it's septic instead.
Right.
That, to my way of thinking, would be the responsible thing to do.
Yes. Now, when you talk about inspecting the vehicles because they're, driving through Gloucester, pump trucks that we would drive through Gloucester with don't require an inspection on the tanks. There's no state regulation. And as far as I know, throughout Massachusetts, there are no local regulations other than a Board of Health inspection yearly, looking at the tank visually, making sure that the valves aren't leaking, caps aren't leaking, and things like that. So there's really no testing regulations for any septic transport vehicle that I know of.
Ronnie, do you agree with that?
As far as what?
That there was no inspection of your trucks?
We always had just the local Board of Health and your regulars, like you get on your car, a safety sticker.
Correct.
So the mechanics of the truck, but nobody actually was responsible for checking the tank except you.
No, and the Board of Health each year.
All right, but you're the expert.
Excuse me?
You're the expert on the management of a tank.
Yeah, you can do a visual inspection and their vacuum and their pressure tank. So if there's a problem, it's going to show up.
So as long as it's not in the ground, you can get under it and inspect it with a sense of surety.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So what worried me was that tank is in the ground in normal silver tank, and that makes it, unless you're going to get somebody inside the tank as you would on an enormous ship or something, there's no way to determine.
So I have no problem moving that tank if that's.
Well, just get it up onto a frame.
Yeah. Or if that's the rules that you can't have a stationary tank, I don't have a problem.
Ross had, as I remember, Ross had a tanker over on Leonard Street. Just no tractor attached to it.
Right.
Isn't that right?
Yep.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
Can I ask a question here on this? The state regulation says that we can't have a permanent structure, a tank that is permanent to the property. So the blue frac tank that we have is a mobile tank. If you want us to put it up on blocks and get it off the ground, we have now turned that into a non-mobile structure.
I'm sorry, I wasn't talking about the blue truck, the blue tank.
I thought we were talking about the blue tank.
Well, the silver one.
It kind of wafted around a little bit, sorry.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
okay. Yes,
But-
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, but I think at least on the department side, Fred, the preference would be that to empty the white tank, if they decide to keep it on site, that it's capped off, but empty, preferably off-site if they can do that. But they could potentially replace it in 6 months' time with another of the blue style frac or whatever it is, style tank truck, with the understanding that if it is going to be transported for any reason through town, it's got to be empty. It cannot go through town with a load.
Oh,
Okay.
Imagine there's a fire in the neighborhood. And you need to move those things out of there.
Why would you?
Um, where they're located, it wouldn't, then, I'm sorry, but I don't know why we would have to worry about those if there was a fire.
Well, boy, I mean,
I mean,
you're in such sensitive area close to wetlands.
Correct.
You've got the sewer treatment plant right there too. That was picked with it. I mean, we can throw a rock at each other.
Ronnie, I'm just trying to keep a framework around it.
So if we had to move that tank, okay, if, let's say you told me that I had to move that tank right now, I could have that emptied out in an hour. I mean, it would be in our trucks,
Okay,
but
well,
it would be emptied.
I've said enough.
That tank is not designed to be moved fully loaded. It says it right on it. It's a mobile tank that meets the regulations, but it's not designed to haul the gallons, if you understand that. And I'm sorry, I just didn't understand as far as why we would have to worry about it if there was a fire. That's all. But yes, we could move it if we had to.
One last question. If the silver tank is decommissioned and you bring in another blue tank,
yes,
that blue tank fully loaded is not designed to be hauled, fully loaded?
Correct.
So, all right. So its benefit of being mobile is really lost because the tank is not designed to be moved.
The storage tankers, frac tanks are storage tankers. They're not designed to be moved over the road with gallons inside of them. It's 20,000 gallons. There's no way you could get it permitted to move it on the road. It would be overweight.
Okay.
So
The reason we have those is,
forgive me.
we have them there so that we can store our sewage and our grease there and haul it away with a 9,000 gallon tanker or a pump truck to remove it out of the tank to move to another location.
So Fred, essentially what's happened is, and just for the other board members, anybody else who cares or listens, is that they've met the requirements of the regulation, but, with some quotations around it, but it does meet the requirements. So we can't technically enforce against that, but the white tank, silver tank, as you call it, is one that, yes, for sure, in the regulations, doesn't meet the requirements, does need to be eliminated, and that's that.
Correct. I agree with you there. But again, I just want to make sure they understand the frac tank is not designed to be moved through a town with liquid in it.
Yeah,
They're
we
designed to
understand.
be
Thank
put
you,
on
Fred.
site.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Max, is there anybody in the audience who
You're
wants to
waiting
speak
to
forward?
open up to public comment, that's all.
Okay, no, I was just, I think that would also be helpful to know.
If anybody would like to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function for Zoom. It should be located at the bottom of your screen if you're on your computer. I think it's *9 also, if I'm remembering correctly, Joe, if you want to if you're on your cell phone. I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay. So the concerned neighbor isn't.
We did speak on the phone. He did state his consternation that he wasn't notified. I said, although this is a public hearing, it's not one where we were required to do a butter notification, and we were very aware of the neighborhood concerns over the operations at the facility. I had also asked him to send whatever concerns they had in writing. He didn't know if he'd have time to write those concerns, and so it became conversation of diminishing returns, but I promised that I would bring up the concerns at the meeting. And we would make whatever efforts we possibly could to, try to mitigate some of those concerns.
Okay.
So at this point, the board has the ability to, at this point, to ask that the white tank be removed within 6 months, and to allow the use of another, for lack of a better term, and I apologize, I keep forgetting the name of this thing. We'll call it the blue tank, and replace that with another blue tank, and not to be transported at all with any liquid in it at any time on city streets.
And Max, that would also require permitting, a perfunctory permitting process?
We would need, well, I would have to double check with our partners over at the building department, but I'm sure Rob is probably correct, Ron, that they may not need permission or any permits from the building department, but I'll double check, then I'll advise them accordingly.
So the storage itself doesn't need to be permitted, is that? what
It
you're
does
saying?
through us.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So at the moment, there is a single permit for a single tank. Is that correct?
They were both being kind of held and allowed to be temporarily used until we had this conversation.
Okay.
But with this conversation, if the board agrees and votes accordingly, they would have 6 months to change over the two solutions, the white tank for another blue tank, essentially.
Right. So I would so move.
Uh,
Is there a second?
Second.
I second it.
Any further discussion?
I apologize, Joe. Somebody did just raise their hand. I don't
Ah.
know, you don't have to allow it at this point.
No, no,
but,
well, that's all right. This is an appropriate time. We're having discussion, so discuss away. You can put them on.
I can, Rachel, can you do me a favor? And because I think you're the only one who has the ability at this point as an administrator. I don't know if she's here. Sorry, they took all my permissions away. Body's not even cold yet,
Oh, my God.
and they've already taken my permissions away. I apologize, Ms. Cross. Let's see. Unfortunately, and because it's past 5:30, our office manager is out the door as well. Hold on just one sec. Let's see if I can.
What's going on?
My apologies, I just ran to the bathroom.
Unions let you get away with everything.
I
So
think that
Cheryl
the person
Cross-
raising their hand should be able to speak now.
Yes. She is.
Cheryl, if you can go ahead and speak, please.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you give your name and address, please?
Yep, my name is Laurent Cross. Live at 11 Marshall Street.
Good.
Go right ahead.
So I just wanted to make a comment. I've heard couple reference to one neighbor that was the only one making making remarks about this that has been here a year. That person actually ended up leaving the area because he couldn't take it anymore. And there is multiple people on the street that have issues with this. So I just want to make I think that, you're talking to another of our neighbors, the one that couldn't be here today and was a little disgruntled that he couldn't. We've discussed with him as well. So just wanted to make sure that, it's an understanding that this is not a single complaint and it's been going on for quite a while.
And the nature of the complaints is noise, odors, or all of the above, or?
It's been all of the above. I have to say that the odor, we've been here for about 10 years now. The odor, the first few years was a real problem. And we had some discussion with Ronnie, and I have to say that this is much better now than it's been. Especially in the summer when it gets hot and we're outside. That was quite a problem when we wanted to be outside. It's much better in the last few years. The noise is more of an issue, and it's more like you said for the early hours and the late hours. With the early hours, I know our neighbor that ended up selling his house. was a little closer than we are, and for him it was a constant battle. Couldn't he was woken up every morning, and that was an issue with him. I've been listening to this regulation, the difference between fixed tank versus mobile tank. First of all, I don't really understand what it changes, the difference, especially if you cannot move them, in a quick amount of time. So it sounds very technical to me. But the main thing is that we have very large tankers that come at any time of the day, and the pumps are pretty noisy. I've measured them at the back of my yard, and we were reaching 80, 85 decibels. I mean, this is this can be an inconvenience. So anyway, that's the.
No, it's understood. One of the things we can also do is have a conversation with the building department, because their zoning regulations oversee
The message
concerns and
on Express.
complaints in regards to noise, more than ours does actually. As the board is very well aware from past issues, we are the appeals board if there's an enforcement on a company as to whether or not there is any relief that can be provided against the enforcement. So, but I'll bring it to the attention of the building inspector and see if whether or not, sound testing can be performed, just to see what the story is. But it would require a formal complaint from somebody in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been done. I know our neighbor has really done it. Placed a lot of complaints. We did at some point. We haven't seen any result to any of that. So,
all I can promise at this point is that I will check into what the history is on that. And if you can, sir, if you, not sure you can see my name, but call the department, please ask for Max, M-A-X, and let's continue this conversation and see what we can do.
Yep.
Thank you for your comments. So there's a motion on the floor regarding decommissioning or replacement of the fixed tank with another frac tank. And I would just add parenthetically, not to the motion, but parenthetically add to the owners and Wind River to take note of the concerns of the neighbors. If you can do anything without necessitating the intervention of either the health department or the building department, that would obviously behoove you to do that. So any other comments on the motion? All in favor? I vote yes.
Yes. Claudia, yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Kelly,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
All right, Ron and Rob and whoever else, I'll make sure that a letter of the board's decision goes out to certified mail in the next week or so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you for your participation.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank
Thank you. Right.
Next item on the agenda refers to the recombinant DNA committee formation. New members on the board may wonder what this is all about. In the interest of time, let me just say that years ago, it's over 10 years ago now, in anticipation of increased biotech activities coming to Gloucester, this board formulated regulations regarding recombinant DNA work in Gloucester. They were adopted by City Council. The regulations impose some common sense constraints on recombinant work in Gloucester. They also provide assurance to Gloucester residents that the NIH guidelines, those are the overarching federal guidelines, the NIH guidelines are being followed. and that the community will have a resource to turn to if there be any questions. The regulations call for a 5-member committee called the Gloucester Biosafety Committee. The primary role of that committee is to ensure safety and that the fact that the NIH guidelines are being followed, but also make it easy for companies and institutions to comply with those regulations by having a group that will monitor them. The 5-member committee is meant to be comprised of 3 members from the public, the board chair or their designee, or health department director or his or her designee. Thus far, we have 2 members of the community that are graciously volunteered to participate, possibly a 3rd. The 2 that have already confirmed are Lynn Klotz. He's a retired biotech scientist and executive. Currently, an interesting background, currently a senior fellow of the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, specifically regarding chemical and biological weapons. So Lynn is someone known to myself who is very well suited to sit on this committee. The second person is Lynn Jackson, also someone known to me, retired from biotech with a background in veterinary science as it applies to preclinical studies and pharmaceuticals and their toxicities. So again, Lynn is very well suited to serve in this committee. Maggie Rosa has also volunteered. She's retired from biotech as a molecular biologist and also patent agent on biotech applications. But we don't yet know, she doesn't yet know as to whether or not she's eligible to participate, given that she also serves on another board. That's a very brief background about this committee, and it's more meant to be an update to the board. It's probably worth us scheduling a larger discussion as to what this regulation entails, because all the new members don't know anything about it, I suspect. And I'm happy to do that at a future date where we can specifically schedule time to make that presentation. In the meantime, are there any other questions, specific questions that I can answer at this point? I guess the next steps, I should say, sorry, Claudia.
No,
The
that's
next
okay.
steps are for the members of the public members of the subcommittee or the committee, excuse me, to be, Max, correct me if I'm wrong, to be approved by city council or perhaps just the administration. I'm not.
That's one of
clear.
the things we have to discover, and we'll have enough time, but I would definitely, I just made a note to myself, as a matter of fact, to check in with Joanne Cenos to see what kind of approval would need to be made for a subcommittee. Would be essentially a permanent subcommittee of the board.
Right.
And because the board would have general oversight of their operations. So I will get that answer to the board. My recommendation would also be to have the CAO or somebody from the administration involved with the meeting discussion about the RNA subcommittee, so that the administration knows what's going on and has a real understanding that it's an important requirement of the regulations, and it's been long overdue. And Tracy, I hope you're feeling okay. And so
You can hear me?
yes, I can. Sorry.
Oh, no.
You've been very good. It's been very quiet. Don't worry. So
don't know how to-
anyway, yeah, just so that the administration has a stronger understanding of what's involved.
Yeah, good.
So I just want to know, so it's the three community people, the board chair, and who's the 5th person?
Be the health director or their designee.
Uh-huh. Great.
So, as I said, we can talk in a little bit more detail about that at a future time. let's move on to old business. And Max, I believe you'll be able to navigate through many of.
Sure, yeah, there are quite a few outstanding old business items.
Right.
I want to send thanks to Kelly, who I know is incredibly busy in her own role. And she did put together a letter to submit to the Gloucester Daily Times or whomever regarding the board's concerns about gun violence being a public health concern. It was just sent out today. I'm not sure if board members had any comments or additions, subtractions. If there are any and you get them to me by tomorrow, we will finalize them. But generally speaking, I thought it was an excellent letter. Really well written. I think really respectful of, you know, both concerns on either side, but the underlying fact of the matter is that this kind of gun violence, or any gun violence, forgive me, is deplorable and should be mitigated as best as possible. So that's all I have to say. Kelly, do you have any comments?
No, I just apologize for the last minute sending it over. But yeah, I think kind of just taking the stance from a public health perspective as opposed to anybody's like personal beliefs on gun ownership or anything like that, is kind of the way it should be handled, and kind of just, you know, kind of making our stance known that it is a public health issue and that we will work with, you know, policymakers and our community agencies and members to make sure that the city of Gloucester is a safe place to be. I also wanted to acknowledge the feelings that people are having of these constant things that are going on in our world. So I kind of just wanted to offer that support to our community members as well.
I thought it was an excellent letter, Kelly.
Yeah,
And
thank
I think just as is, I didn't have anything to add. And and we would submit this to the Gloucester Daily Times, to the city council, to the administration.
Yeah, I've seen like other communities can, you know, post it on the city website. I think it's just kind of showing the public that we are here and we are working towards creating a safe community, and, you know, that sort of thing. So it, you know, whatever folks want to do with it is fine.
I think it'd be great to post it to send it to the newspaper.
I think as an editor, I think it'd make a very
Yeah.
fine editorial
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
And so unless I hear any major edits from any of the members between now and Monday, on Monday, we'll work towards, you know, letting the administration review it. Joe will go under your signature. Well, all board members, but Joe's signature as chair. And then we'll disperse it from there and see how it goes. All right.
Yeah.
Brianne, are you still with us? We've got the body art regulation update. I know that you've been doing some research, and I want to recognize Brianne had taken a few days off and was nice enough to jump in for this conversation. So Brianne, are you available still?
I'm here. Sorry, I'm still in the car.
No,
Heading
that's quite
home.
all right.
So yeah, I'm here.
So any updates from the last conversation? I wasn't here at the last meeting, so.
Yeah, so I know Kate had been helping me try to reach out to Beverly's public health nurse. I also gave her a call to try to get some info from them. And I don't think either one of us have heard back yet from her, but I did have a great conversation with the public health nurse in Salem about their regulations. And she informed me that there's actually a working group going on between Salem, Peabody, Beverly, Marblehead, and maybe some other communities. They actually got a grant to update a lot of their regulations, and Body Art is one of those. So they're actually all in big discussions of changing their current regulations. And so I was able to get a little insight from her, and I had specifically asked her about, their training requirements, and she was actually saying how difficult it's been for a lot of their practitioners to try to get the amount of training that's required in the current regulations. So a lot of them are asking for like a year-long apprenticeship on top of the certification that's required. And one of the practitioners that was going to be applying said that, yeah, they could get this apprenticeship, but it was going to be once a month and for a year and cost her $7,000 to do the apprenticeship. So, it was just something that she was thinking of, long-term for people of not wanting, to cause that much, for people to pay that much for, training like that. So that was just one of her comments overall on the training aspects of permanent makeup.
But what it sounds like, if I can,
Mm-hmm.
what it sounds like to me is that there's a regional move afoot to come up with something standardized, and
Yes.
it probably behoove us not to jump ahead of everybody and actually participate in that conversation before we make any determinations on our own.
Yeah, so Peabody's public health nurse connected me with Tracy, who is the public health nurse in Marblehead, who's running the working group. So I am now kind of in that little group of, and they're all meeting on July 21st.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Strategic planning, board department updates, but the only update I have in regards to strategic planning is that would have been part of my report as well, is as part of the administration's and move to find out where ARPA funding could go. This is the American Recovery Act funding that's coming through, and we were allowed to present on behalf of the department on several different things. And one of the things that the administration through Kelly had recommended is that putting money in to our ARPA request that included money for a facilitator, essentially, to help the board walk through a strategic planning process. So we did do that. We just came up with a set amount that we thought was reasonable for that purpose. But that's as far as the department has gotten on that.
Yeah, one thing that Max and I have discussed very briefly was to see if the board would like there to be a mechanism to get public input as to our strategic plan. I don't know what form that would take, whether it's just signing up for a survey being sent out, or whether there just be a room on the website for people to leave messages. But whatever the format, what's the sense of the board as to whether or not that's a good idea or not something we want to embark on?
It sounds like a good idea, and having spent time, with Jill Cahill doing the interviews, she has raised several times the issue of supporting the idea of having a facilitator. That I would opt to wait until we actually have that person and see, what their experience has been, what they suggest as a way to get public input.
Sure.
Because there's probably a lot of different ways to do it, but I think it's a great idea to have public input. I'm just not exactly sure how, but I'm guessing a facilitator would have a good idea about that.
And just to give board members an idea of timeline, then from what the department's being told by the administration, ARPA funds moving forward likely won't become available until September. So it stretches the timeline out a little bit. I'm sure the board can have preliminary discussions regardless. to frame some of the thoughts and feelings that they have for goals and objectives, et cetera, moving forward. And then when the facilitator is there, can bring those to that conversation and have them help formulate them as a plan.
Other comments? Eric, Kelly, anything else?
No, I agree with Claudia, kind of letting the facilitator guide what the best way to do that kind of public input outreach. But I think it is a good idea to kind of, to get their input, but then also have it be in a strategic way of getting, instead of just like a blank question box, like, maybe a survey, like you mentioned, could be
Okay.
helpful.
Good. Next item, Biobot reporting, Max.
So this is just a quick update in regards to, we did send a request, a memo to the administration with the board's recommendations for continuing Biobot contract, the Biobot contract through to fiscal year 23, which is what we're in now. Unfortunately, and I'm gonna have to bang on the door one more time, we haven't heard anything back in regards to that. I'm sure we're gonna be getting a Biobot invoice pretty soon, and the administration will be saying, well, where'd you expect us to get the money from? And we're gonna say to them, well, frankly, you said you had the money for it, so I'm coming back to you. And so that's gonna be my conversation next week. I've got to catch Jill before she leaves for her vacation and hopefully get that wrapped up. I also reached out to the CAO, John Dunn, and the same email, but unfortunately didn't hear back from him either. So maybe it's something I said, but that's where it stands at the moment. However, the testing is continuing. I'm just going to continue the testing until such time as I'm told not to.
Yeah.
Good. Next, Max, COVID-19.
Kate, if you don't mind taking this one on, I'd appreciate it. Are you still available? If not, I can jump in real quick.
I'm still here. Sorry, I had to fix my screen.
There you go.
Nothing too terribly exciting to report. We have seen a slight increase in cases in Maven after Fiesta and the 4th of July, which was expected. However, our hospitalizations are still low. We did have an outbreak in a nursing home, but that was also taken care of, under control, and they're actually, I want to say 80% recovered already from that. And there was only one hospitalization from that. That person is also recovered from COVID. So for the moment,
Was that a staff member,
seeing,
Kate?
huh?
Kate, was that a staff member or a patient?
That was a patient.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yes, we are seeing an expected increase as, people are out and about without their masks and spreading COVID, but we're not seeing severe disease like we were previously.
Good.
Another note to point out is that in that same ARPA conversation and memo that went to the administration, we did put in a significant amount of money for contact tracing. What it's more popularly known as contact tracing, but it's actually case monitoring in reality. We have temporarily suspended contact tracing in the department, whereas most people know exactly what to do. We put information on our website. We'll be getting it out in better forms going forward, but thus far we haven't had too many people contacting us with any questions. Generally speaking, people know what to do, know where to find the information. We'll be getting that same information out, and Kate's working on this now in different languages so that ELL, English language learners, will understand hopefully what to do and what they need to do, and be able to contact us if there are any further questions. But that's pretty much where we stand on that. But we figure we can get away with that now, but come September, as we've known, from September to June, we can get spikes, we can get variants, we can get all sorts of things going on. And it would probably be in the best interest of the city to reach out to people to make sure that they understand what their rights and responsibilities are if they do become infected. So that's that.
I have a question about public information about the antiviral Paxlovid. And because I had COVID and I took it, and only because a friend suggested it, and my husband too, and it seemed like it really helped for quicker recovery. And so I would think in a place like a nursing home, with a lot of older people, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about it out. You kind of have to know about it and call your doctor and ask for a prescription. And so I was wondering about, how that information might, people might be more educated about that.
So Paxlovid, actually in the nursing home outbreak, everyone who was capable of being put on Paxlovid was put on Paxlovid.
Oh, great.
On top of that, as far as more information about it, it's good to have that physician gatekeeper for Paxlovid, because there's a specific set of criteria that you have to meet to be eligible to take Paxlovid safely.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
There's, there could be the opportunity to put on our website or wherever there's, DPH has a whole, like a doctor on call essentially. And so you can go to, it's not through DPH, but they contracted with, doctors to have folks, they go on the website and the doctor will screen you, assess the medications for any interactions and things, and then they will send a script to a pharmacy to pick up. So you don't have to have a primary care doctor. You don't have to go through a primary care doctor. The hours are pretty flexible in the sense they're open, receiving calls on Saturdays and Sundays and late hours, like I think until like 9 or 10 p.m.
Well, that's really important information, because I tested positive on a Sunday, and the on-call doctor told me I should go to urgent care. And I was like, go there in person? I was able to get a virtual appointment, but my husband wasn't, and he had to go to urgent care. He had to drive to urgent care and, be there. So to know, that's a wonderful service.
I didn't know about it until my dad used it, and
wow.
And they do have other languages, interpreters. And the other thing I just read too was that the state has granted pharmacists to, so there's the test to treat option. I don't know if I think you'd have to go on DPH's website to see which pharmacies participate in it, but the state pharmacy board or whatever granted pharmacists to be able to do the prescribing for Paxlovid, which is, very new for them to be able to do that. So that I think just got like approved yesterday or whatever. So there are more opportunities and access to treatment for COVID that perhaps could be shared too.
Yeah, that would be great to be on the city's website.
Yeah, Kelly actually is along those lines. Can you send me the links to save me from trying to hunt it down?
Yeah.
That'd be huge. Thank you.
Yep.
I will say that when I was contacting people, there were actually quite a few who had started on Paxlovid, and it seems to be, especially for our older population, like as soon as they test positive, they're getting on Paxlovid. So,
but to be able to call a doctor and have a virtual, appointment rather than having, being told you have to go show up somewhere when you don't feel well and you don't feel like driving, and exposing other people. It's a great thing. It's a great service.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you all. Rachel, your favorite subject.
The one everyone's been wanting to hear about.
My God, the one that we get the most.
I know, and poor Tracy's been waiting so patiently to hear the updates. So a lot has happened in the last month. We had been keeping the creek open at the beginning of June, and it had been testing fine until we had a heavy rain event. And as part of our investigation, we're trying to see how heavy rain events impact the creek to sort of confirm or disprove our theory about sewer exfiltration. So we did end up testing after 1 month ago today, actually, after the last extreme rain event we had, and it came back 14,136 CFU, which is far beyond the acceptable limit of 104 CFU and nearly 13 times the highest we've ever seen before. So it was my recommendation to the administration that we keep the creek closed indefinitely until we complete the investigation and we remediate the issues that we find. Now, because we have closed the creek, we are no longer doing weekly testing. So there's no weekly testing to report back to the city, back to city council. We're doing intermediate testing when it rains. I'm waiting for the next rainstorm that qualifies as a high volume, short duration rain event. And that testing is not for the state, that's just for our investigation into the creek. And it's not necessarily at the bathing area. So it gets a little bit confusing because even when I do have results to report to you, it does not necessarily indicate that the creek is open. Again, when we see high levels after a rain event to that extent, it could indicate that a pipe in the area has holes in it and is exfiltrating sewage into the creek. We're operating off of that theory, and we need one more round of data to sort of confirm that. So we're right now, again, waiting for that. There's nothing to be done in the meantime. We're sort of at the mercy of Mother Nature. We did erect 2 permanent signs at the lifeguard stand. I did the drilling myself. I was very excited about that. And we are really coming to an end of the investigation. So hopefully the results sort of confirm what we've been thinking, and then we can make recommendations to the city as far as what we could do to remediate this. Warden Curran has been fabulous, has been equipped to interpret things for me along the way, explain things to me along the way, and will be equipped to make recommendations as far as the engineering and infrastructural side of things if we do end up finding abnormalities.
Rachel, have things happened, repairs been made or maintenance done that might have fixed the problem? And therefore we're waiting to see the impact?
There has not been, to my knowledge, there has not been repairs done on the lines in question that I believe are the problem. We are doing this because, first of all, there's one line that we looked at that we cannot get the camera all the way down, right? So we want as much data as we possibly can get to sort of tie to that, if it is that. And also we want to be completely sensitive to the fact that we want to be extra sure that this is the problem, since we would be asking DPW to take a closer look and also to make the repairs that are necessary. So no, the short answer is no, I'm not aware of any repairs that are being made currently.
So if we get significant rainfall and CFUs go through the roof again, what action is being taken or will be taken?
The next step, and I should clarify that once we do, I have the coolers and bottles right, looking at them right now. We deliver those to the lab, and that does take some time because we're not just doing regular Enterococci sampling. We are still testing for Enterococci, but we're also using a specialized lab to tell us what specific DNA of bacteria that we're looking at. So there's some question to how much of this Enterococci is coming from the bird population. So we need to parse out which of the Enterococci is avian, which is human. We fully expect that there's at least a moderate, if not the majority of this pollution coming from human source. But we do want to have the exact numbers to parse out the portion of that. So I don't expect there to be any shocks there. I do expect there to be at least a little bit of bird Enterococci in the water. After that, we'll get together with the administration and with Department of Public Works. I will make a presentation to the board along with our engineers and our biologists from Woodard and Curran, and we'll make specific recommendations to city infrastructure. If it's not city infrastructure, then we'll have a different sort of forecasting, weather forecasting and ecological plan. Although I find that sort of route unlikely at this point. But yeah, so the next step is to interpret the results and translate that to the rest of the city.
Eric.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that it happened after a rainstorm. That's what I suspected, right? We talked about this a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. I know you're not testing now, but we're in a big drought. It would be curious to see if the numbers went back down again when there isn't any rain.
It would be curious, and the combination of dry weather and the creek when it's at low tide is also sort of problematic because, as I've explained before, we have a very complex, unique ecosystem over there with the lack of circulation and the high temperatures of the water. So I would imagine that it's probably not at 14,000 and has not been since. That's just my speculation since that rain event. But I still imagine that it's spiking way beyond that 104 CFU level, just because of it being July and the weather conditions that we're seeing.
Is testing prohibited, or are we just wasting money? Is that the
I
issue?
think that testing, and again, we will be testing with rainstorms. Testing weekly is not terribly expensive, but it may send the wrong message to the public, because the point of testing weekly would be to determine whether or not that bathing area is safe for the public to swim. And we've determined that it's not safe right now. So it's sort of pointless. And also having results, for example, weekly, if the results were very low, that could communicate to the public that the creek is safe, when really in a matter of hours, conditions could change and bacteria could proliferate really quite quickly and rapidly. So it sends the wrong message that for this entire week, the creek is safe if we do have a low sample. And we'd like to have a consistent message and make sure that people are aware of the risks associated.
So,
Right.
Joe, also, I think the thing to keep in mind is that it not only fails for if you have a single event over 100 colony forming units, but it's also a geometric mean. So when you've had a reading of over 14,000, even if you had 4 consecutive fabulous readings,
yeah,
it won't make any difference. That geometric mean is going to be on failure for the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
So we would have to test every day, day after day, probably for the next several months in order to get that to come down. So technically speaking, it's needs to be closed anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Max.
Could you just, keep us kind of posted, because that's the question that you get stopped on the street and asked about most, being on the Board of Health.
Yeah.
I
would be happy to.
I kind of learned from the administration that the creek was closed. I didn't, permanently. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and perhaps, with Max's blessing, it's appropriate to send weekly updates. Although I will say at this point, we're getting asked for a lot of updates, and there won't be any updates until we have the heavy rain event.
Yeah,
So,
no, I hear you. It's a lot. Now I understand. I didn't understand it before.
yeah, absolutely. And I apologize for any lack of communication there.
Rachel, do you want to go straight into the pest control?
It looks like someone's raising it, like maybe.
Yeah, so
Tracy.
Tracy would like to
Tracy.
speak. Yeah.
I can unmute myself.
Oh,
Go ahead,
you
Tracy.
can.
all set.
There you go.
You've done it.
Mute myself.
The counselor.
You're not testing weekly because
We're not testing weekly because when we test at a regular time every week, it's not necessarily representative of the condition of the creek throughout the week. We know that there's an active pollution problem, and we don't want to indicate by any means that the creek is safe to swim in right now.
are you testing other beaches weekly?
We're testing every beach weekly besides Cressy's and the Half Moon, which are the only 2 that we test monthly. So as the state requires, we do a weekly testing program.
Okay, I'm just curious, why Cressy's and Half Moon monthly?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
They
Huh.
were, forgive me, I can probably help answer that, Tracy. So the city had actually applied for at some point for a variance that would allow, because it does cost. And so the based on mitigating factors and work that have been done and dealing with the combined sewer overflow issues in the Inner Harbor, et cetera, and prolonged good testing at those locations, the state said you only need to reduce down to once a month for both those beaches, so we only have to go there once a month. Having said that, Niles Beach was actually, I think, one of the other locations, and because it failed consistently, again, even with the once a month, it had to go back to a weekly testing regime. So yeah, but every other beach, especially the main ones, obviously, we're just talking about the creek. The beach itself at Good Harbor still needs to be tested and still passing. And Wingersheek gets tested as well and still passing. Pavilion on the Inner Harbor, which is usually the canary in the coal mine for any issues in the harbor, has been tested and doing okay. So, you know, the rest of the beaches seem to be doing fine.
So in short, Tracy, we're not testing because, again, we're doing other testing for the investigation. The creek is closed anyway because of the geomine, and the conditions of the creek can change really quite rapidly. And so we don't want random testing throughout the week, maybe not after a rainstorm, to be representative of the condition of it.
I'm just, I don't know if the word is confused. I understand what you're saying, but if you're testing all the other beaches once a week, it wouldn't take any extra money, right? And
It would take extra money, and it's not terribly expensive, but that data would not be helpful to us because the problem that we are investigating is likely only occurring after a heavy rain event for the most part. So if we're doing weekly testing and the weather events don't qualify as something that we'd be concerned about, that data is going to indicate that the creek is okay when it might not be. So, so that data is just not helpful for us in understanding what the problem is. And also the creek is going to be closed anyway. And the purpose of weekly testing is to determine the status of the creek, whether it be open or closed.
So Tracy, probably the best way to understand it is that because we had that 14,000 reading and the
Right.
normal is 104, well, normal, forgive me, the highest you can go is 104 and still remain open. They basically, to use a word that's not really appropriate, but they do also on top of the single event, they do an average over a period of time. And because we've had that 14,000, we went ahead and tested every week. Within 2 weeks, it'd be closed again. It'd be closed permanently for the rest of the season. So it's 6 in one, half dozen another.
Okay. All right. Can I don't know if this is okay to ask, like, but what pipes are you testing? Can I ask that, or is that not legal?
We're not testing specific pipes. We have done some camera work in several pipes in East Gloucester throughout the creek area. We did put a camera down on the Neptune Place line, and we did put a camera down in the Hart Street line. And I believe I've sent a memo to the administration that was forwarded to the city council at some point that summarized the results of those investigations.
Okay, so there's a pipe that's broken on Eastern Ave over by the intersection of the lights. Do you know about that?
I do not know. So do you mean the Neptune Place line? There is
no. This is the address is actually 1 Webster Street. It's that brick building on the corner of Webster and Eastern Ave.
Understood.
And they've been digging there for a while. I have pictures if you want them. And the pipe goes, I'm just wondering, you know, because water flows downhill, right? And Eastern Avenue right across the street is the marsh. So I was just wondering if that was one of the pipes that you were testing, if there was damage. I know it goes right onto Eastern Ave, so.
Yeah. No, thank you for that suggestion. So the biologists that we're working with have done really extensive testing throughout the marsh system and in the catchment basin. We have mapped out sort of where things drain in the city and which watershed it goes into. And I'd have to look at that specific location, but that area of Eastern Ave up Webster Street is not a part of the catchment basin. So again, it depends on the exact location, but I would be surprised if that was if that was contributing. We have sort of narrowed down the spots of high bacteria to specific locations that are a bit farther away from that area.
So Neptune Place, I know I've heard of it, but can you?
Yeah,
give
so
me-
it's there's a line that goes from, so it's the first, if you're coming towards the annex, the first right after the light. It's a very small street, and there's a sewer line that goes through the marsh to Bassett.
Right. So the pipe that I'm talking about is not that far away from Neptune Place.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but a lot of folks suggest that things happening over by the Veterans School, it might be part of it, and that's actually outside of the catchment basin. So it's strange how it works, but we've tested around there, and the high results we've gotten are a bit farther away towards the other places that we've been investigating.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for attending and for being patient.
Oh, no worries.
Joe, just so you know, there's a Marianne Boucher who has a raised hand raised. I don't know if you want to accept further comment.
This might be regarding the pest control, I believe. Is that?
It's possible. I would have to ask. It came
Yeah,
up during this conversation, so I'm not sure.
Sure. Let her.
Okay. Marianne, you should be able to talk now.
Thank you, Marianne Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. This actually is in regards to the creek. First of all, I want to thank Rachel for her extensive work on this situation. She's been remarkable in answering all the questions throughout. I've actually attended all of these meetings, and I think she's thorough and just brilliant. But I would suggest, I want to make a suggestion. I live in East Gloucester. I live between Good Harbor Beach and Niles Beach. So I actually go by both those beaches practically daily, and I'm seeing people in the creek, and I'm seeing children in the creek. And my main concern has always been the kids, the safety of the kids. Why do we not have this on our Gloucester website? Maybe on the beach reservation page, that the creek is off limits. People coming into town might not know it, and I'm seeing people in the creek. And I think we have to be truthful and honest to ourselves and to the people of the city. And I think that we're talking so much in this entire meeting about the safety of other things. And this, to me, if a child has a cut or a wound, or anybody, and what do children do when they go in the creek or when they go in the water? They open their mouths, they're going to drink it. So I really think it needs to be put on, I highly suggest that it's put on the website for beach parking, and also on the Gloucester website. And again, I appreciate all of Rachel's hard work. I know she's really trying to get to the bottom of it, and I hope that we do, and that the public does know, since we are funding it, where exactly this problem is coming from. So thank you. And I will be for the next discussion as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. I really appreciate your feedback. So that's a great idea. Actually, Mayor Verga suggested that to me last week, and I have drafted something for the website, and I'm working actively with our IT department to get that up front and center. So we are working on that, and that is absolutely time sensitive and is a priority for us. So Mayor Verga did also push that along as an idea, and I think that will hopefully take care of some of the public education. Again, we did put up signs when the creek was over 14,000. I went with my dad and I hammered signs to the rail. They were gone almost immediately, but we are actively putting up signs, and we have 2 permanent ones now, and we are putting something up on the website. And I know that the Times is doing an article about this quite soon as well. So we are working on it. I appreciate the feedback, and we do take that very seriously.
Well, that was a perfect segue, actually. So if you want to move on, I mean, yeah, if you want to give an update on the pest control questions.
So brief background, we received a complaint from actually Marianne last year about pesticide use at our Gloucester Public Schools. long story short, I did some preliminary investigation into what was going on. I asked DPW what was going on. I asked purchasing. I asked the school administration, and we just were not able to get to the bottom of exactly what chemicals were being used and what company and what the purchase orders looked like. And that information is actually from Mass General Law required to be publicly available. So we requested, as of the last board meeting, the administration to become involved in the issue, to help us communicate with the necessary departments, to encourage this information to be located. And I will say that Mayor Verga responded to my memo almost immediately and was happy to help, was very, very helpful in coordinating how to find this information. And we were able to locate the list of chemicals being used at every school. And I did receive a copy of the purchase order from purchasing. So I now do have that information. The purchase order is from last year. I need to verify whether or not the pest control is ongoing. I've heard different things, whether or not, the boxes are still there or not still there. But they are finally in compliance in terms of making that information available.
Eric.
Rachel, one of the things we talked about is the form that's supposed to be filled out when the pest control operator comes to each school. Were they able to find that material? That's required by law?
I believe that should be in the integrated pest management, but I have it right in front of me. So the form, it's not attached to the IPM. The thing that is in the IPM is the chemical names and the active ingredients, which I believe is all that they fill out on that form.
And do we know that these chemicals are safe for children? I mean, has anybody investigated or evaluated that?
We have not gotten to that point. I'm certainly not qualified to speak on that at this time without doing more research.
Oh, absolutely. But I think, Mary, that's probably what we're getting to and what we certainly all care about, that whatever is being used is not going to be harmful to the children in the school or anywhere, or anybody, not just the children, the teachers as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that will be, I mean, perhaps that's the next step in this process. Looks like Marianne would like to speak. With your permission, Joe, I will unmute.
Sure.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. That is exactly why I spoke about this well over a year ago.
Yep.
And because, as you all know, my granddaughter had this rat box in her hand. We need to be more specific. We need to understand all of it. And I don't understand that IPM that you're speaking of, that I have here in front of me, was not updated until last November. And that was nearly a year after I put in my complaint. So yeah, I'm just, why? I just don't understand. And I know, Claudia, I see you shaking your head. They're children. They're children. They should be our first priority of the children, the safety of the children in and around our schools. And that is, I will stick with this until we get to the real bottom of it. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I just want to protect the kids. That is my main focus. And I got pushed off. I couldn't even get an answer from a school committee. I couldn't get an answer from our city. Rachel, God bless you, and Max, God bless you, and the entire Board of Health. I really appreciate all the attention to this, but I don't even know why we even have to do this. It should never have happened. We're going to wait for a child to ingest one of these, and then we're going to do something. I'll never understand it. I really won't. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I have a question, Rachel. Do you have the list of the actual chemicals?
I do, and that is publicly available in the IPM. I'm happy to paste the link in the chat. I don't know what the most appropriate way to share that is, Joe.
If you somehow can send it to me, I'll follow it up.
Just
I
email it to the
I
board
have
members.
them and they are dangerous.
What was that, Max?
I would just say, forgive me, Mary. Just email the link to the board members after the meeting. That'd be
Okay,
great.
I will do
Thank
that.
you. Okay, we probably should get moving on.
Yeah.
I think that Tracy has her hand raised. I'm not sure if that was a mistake or not. Do you want me to?
No, she's
Okay.
all set.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
Rachel, thank you for both of these longstanding issues. It's you've done yeoman's work and you continue to do so. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. And thank you to Mary Berger, who stepped in really promptly to assist us with this.
Since she has her vocal cords exercised, I'm gonna have, and also a lot of the updates that she has are probably updates I would have provided as well. So rather than us duplicating efforts, Rachel, why don't you go ahead with your updates, and mine are gonna be more in terms of staffing.
Absolutely. So we have a lot to report in terms of staffing. I'll start with the bittersweet news. We still have 4 open positions in our prevention team. So right now, Anastasia Satterfield is still holding down the fort in terms of the whole prevention team. Typically, that is a 5-person team, both with a combination of full-time and part-time positions. However, we did interview 3 candidates today for the prevention director position. And I could not be more thrilled with how that went. We'll have 2 in-person interviews with the finalists next week. And both Stasia and I are feeling very comforted and very hopeful about the future for the prevention team and about the folks that we have in the candidate pool. We did have to sadly say goodbye to several staff members this month. First of all, Leah Briere, who was a part of our prevention team, Jess Scola, a part of our prevention team, and then also Jenna Newbegin, who is our grants administrator. So it was very sad to say goodbye to them. They were folks who did a lot of work for our grants programs, and we are trying to learn how to make up for their absence currently. But it does offer an exciting opportunity for our prevention team to rebuild. So we're trying to stay positive, and like I said, we're very excited about the opportunities that are before us. And then did I miss anything for staffing? Oh, Bridget and Cindy Junker and Bridget Nelligan both retired again from the health department last month. We are so grateful and honored to have Kate Cunningham a part of the team. She's been a great fit for us, and Gloucester is extremely lucky, even if they don't know it yet because it's only been a month, but they were assisting in her transition and have again retired, and hopefully for the last time we don't need them again. So we're very grateful for Cindy and Bridget. They've done so much for the city throughout their career, and they will be very much missed. And I don't know if it's appropriate to, very sadly, we'll also be losing Craig as of next week. Next Friday is his last day, I believe. Craig has contributed so much to this department, has been a steady force of productivity, and he will be moving on to his next chapter. We're very happy for him, but we're very, 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 very sad for ourselves. So we'll also be hiring a sanitarian in addition to all of the roles downstairs. So a lot going on in terms of staffing.
Yeah, I actually don't have much to add to what Rachel's had to say, but recognizing the amazing contributions of everybody that has moved on. But that has also been, in my time, just the ebb and flow of the department. It is extraordinary times, I agree, but they're not unique to this department. A lot of the departments in the city are having to go through the same sort of struggles, and in conversations with colleagues, they're facing the same issues of retention and getting new staff onboarded that have experience. So, but I'm very pleased with, where we are right now, especially with great candidates for the prevention director's position. Brianne has been doing gangbusters work in her inspectional role. Jake Taylor, who's our new inspector focusing on food, has really poor guy has hit the ground running, and given all things and what we've thrown at him, has come up to speed really quickly and has done amazing work in a short amount of time. So we're glad for that. So in general, and of course Rachel in her role as the assistant director has been fabulous and really a lifeline for me during these last almost pretty much a year. And couldn't have done along with, as she mentioned, Cindy and Bridget's help, could not have survived the first 6 months without their support. So I'm really grateful to them and to the board for all your support in making it through this period of time. But I believe the department is, in spite of all the transitions, a heck of a lot stronger than it was a while ago. And there's a lot of hope and opportunity moving forward. And there's a great coalition and great group of staff to bring it to its next levels, along with the board's strategic planning. I think there's a great staff to help support those goals and initiatives that the board comes up with. So I'm very pleased for that and thankful.
Thank you, Max. We will miss you quite a bit. And
yeah, whatever.
Can't believe it's your last board meeting. That it's so crazy. And we're very grateful for your contribution. At least I am in my short tenure in the department.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've been sitting here thinking that too, that Max, this is your last meeting.
As far as I know.
We're all gonna miss you, Max.
Yeah, and we'll certainly celebrate you, and we'll have many celebrations for you and opportunities to toast you, but in a more formal way, realizing that this is your last board meeting. Can only say thank you for everything that you've done, and just for your incredible commitment to the department and hanging in there through really tough times, and just being that steadying force that got everybody through.
Appreciate that. Well, forgive me, Joe, go ahead.
No, well, don't step on my praise of you, Max. So I certainly echo what everyone is saying, that not only have been a superb value to the department and the board, but the city itself owes you a huge debt of gratitude. You've been a steady force, not just for the department, but for the city. So speaking for the board, but indirectly for the city, thank you. You've done heroic efforts in many cases. You've not only acted as director now, but you've been in the acting position multiple times in the past, and you've done inspectional services. You've talked to people and quieted things down when things were likely to get out of control. Just endless ways that you've helped not just the board and the department, but the city as a whole. So the city owes you a debt of gratitude, and certainly you have that from the board. And so we wish you well in whatever good things you're going to do in the future. Hopefully send us a bunch of good photographs.
Yeah, that's the plan, part of the plan at least, yes.
Well, and I was thinking about the historical knowledge you have when we were talking about the Wind River, with the Wind River issue, and you were saying, well, when I went out there in 2014, or there's nobody that's going to have that length of history. So I'm sure people will be calling on you from wherever you might be.
That's quite all right, Rachel. I know, and I've already said to her and other staff that I'm basically a text and a phone call away. So if anything comes up, obviously, but and I'm very serious in saying that it's a very strong staff right now. I think that they're going to do great and amazing things. and be a huge support, continue the department's role and being a huge support to the community. And I think there are even more and better things that are going to happen moving forward for the prevention group and other programs that the board wants to see go forward. So it's a great board. There have been several great boards and board members. And I can't say enough with enough gratitude, the professional support, the personal support, the amount of times I've had to come to one or more of you to cry on your shoulders or kick, piss and moan, shouldn't have said that. Anyway, bleep that out. But anyway, yeah, fire me, what do I care? So, you know, it's been an honor to serve this board. It's been an honor to serve the city. I am looking forward, my wife is looking forward to exploring other parts of our lives and leading more creative lives, hopefully, and to explore joy a little bit more. But it's been nothing but an honor to work with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you. All right, I've had enough for one night. I don't know about anybody else.
The last item on the agenda is, I believe, unless there was more to be said by you, concerns of the board. I have two things that I've been remiss in not saying before now, and I should say those two things, especially since we have the majority of the members of the board are newly appointed. One is that we act as a board. We don't act individually. And so that means that direct communication with city council or the administration shouldn't ever be about any particular concern or issue that the board is considering or is likely to consider in the future. That sort of communication should be done by the entire board, because that's how we act. And in fact, ideally, as Max pointed out to me, if someone goes to the city council or the administration and starts discussing some issue, those members of the city council or the administration should say, so what does the board feel about this issue? And so in general, that's the one way that we behave. The other thing is that while the board oversees the department, it does it does that through its director. And so while obviously each member of the board is free to discuss matters with that come to us from citizens or whatever, come and therefore can discuss them with individual staff, it's best to not discuss managerial issues or policy issues or things like that. That should, if you want to have those discussions, have them with Max or the director, because otherwise management becomes complicated. So those are, I think, the two things that I wanted to mention. And I don't say that because there's a particular problem. It's just that we all should be operating from the same hymnal, that's all. Any other concerns of the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the issue of the meeting in person, you know, the hybrid meeting, because Joe, when you and I were at a meeting with the administration, they were the ones who suggested going to the harbor, using the harbor master's office. And then at the last board meeting, and I did look back on the notes, I did bring it up, and all the board members said they want, or the majority wanted to meet in person. So I'm just confused. And I guess we just need to get some clarification before the next meeting.
Yeah, Max, I think you were telling me that there is some, so the idea was to use the harbor master's office.
Right.
And that sounds like a good idea. It's the right size. But there's, Max, you were saying that there's potential conflict, scheduling conflict.
Well, that's the only thing we need to be aware of, because, so Claudia, to get back to your questions and concerns. So we did approach the administration through the office manager there, and she said, well, I'll get back to you. Because the main thing was, it wasn't so much that can we use the space, it's how do we use the space?
Uh-huh.
So how do we schedule it? How is it arranged around other folks? And in the end, although the answer took a little while to get to us, and that's the reason why it didn't happen this time around, I just made an executive decision to say, let's keep it the way it is right now, and in August, let's plan better. Yeah, basically contact the harbor master's office and see if we can get something scheduled in. There must be a calendar somewhere. I'm not aware of it, but it wasn't mentioned to me either. But having said that, we'll reach out to the harbor master's office and see if we can get that done. In respect to what Joe was mentioning, these meetings happen the same nights as the Budget and Finance Committee's meetings. And so we just need to check whether or not they are doing them on site there at the same time, because there's a Budget and Finance Committee meeting tonight, and I should have checked to see where they were being located. I'll find that out.
Is that a
And
public meeting?
It is.
Oh, it is, okay.
Well, forgive me, when you say public, it's a remote meeting.
So it's a meeting where the public can,
They do exactly what you would like to do. So the
yeah, okay.
I
It's
need
a
to-
hybrid meeting, yeah.
Yeah, well, I need to find that out. I need to make sure it's whether or not it is a hybrid meeting, number one, and if it is a hybrid meeting, if their meetings coincide
Yeah.
with Board of Health meeting nights, because then it creates a conflict, and maybe the library is an opportunity because that's the only other space they
Hmm.
offer up as a potential, or the other space that is not really talked about because it's very small. It depends on the board members' feelings about it, is where you've been having the interviews here at Pond Road.
Oh,
It's kind of a small spot, but it is possible to do it there.
that's really small.
It is really small.
If we have any staff, yeah.
Not the best solution, I agree, yeah.
Oh.
So I will check into, I promise, before I leave in
Great.
the next 3 weeks, I'll check into and make sure that if the board is able to meet at the Harbor Masters meeting, that's scheduled appropriately.
Okay, because they did mention another board was meeting there. Had started meeting, I
Yes.
can't remember which one.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know which one, but I'll check into it and I'll make sure. it
Thank you,
happens.
thank
Yep.
you, Max. Motion to adjourn.
Are there any other concerns of board members or anything else? Any other comments? Claudia has a motion to adjourn. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next meeting is
Oh.
August 4th.
Right, unless
Okay.
there's a meeting. Well, I'm imagining that there will definitely be a meeting sooner to
Yes.
present to the board a candidate for the director, for the health director position.
Right.
We don't know yet when that will be, but there will, but that is the plan, that at some point, somebody will be moved forward to,
So this meeting would be to do what? To
for the board to
interview?
give approval, for the board to give approval
Okay.
to the choice of the committee.
So I think if I'm interpreting this correctly, Claudia, and catch me if I'm not, but just for point of clarification, what's being said is that if the second interview meetings go well tomorrow, that a candidate will be chosen that will then be brought to the full board potentially next Thursday in person at potentially the Harbor Master's office or wherever we can arrange it. But failing that at a future date,
Yes,
the board will have another discussion about it.
exactly.
Good.
And we'll stay
Okay.
in communication and make whatever arrangements are necessary.
Okay,
Good. We're
Yeah.
adjourned.
yes,
Very good. Have a
Thanks,
pleasant
everyone.
weekend all.
yeah, everybody.
Be
Thank you.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Go Red Sox.